The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those knuckleheads of liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We are coming at you on February 13th, 2023, just a day after the Super Bowl. And we're actually going to be focusing on Pennsylvania. So, hopefully this goes better for them than the Super Bowl. But anyways, before we get to the show, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite. Last word in Liberty, he is a retired engineer from the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our lower left-hand corner, we have a special guest today, Tim McMaster. He is the Township Supervisor of Conewago, Pennsylvania. So we're going to get to hear about him. This is part of our Libertarians in Office series, where we want to introduce you to people who are actually out there on the front lines doing the job, putting these ideas into action. So let's talk to Tim. And by the way, James, can I bring up the visual as well here too? So here is Tim's webpage. He is currently the Township Supervisor. He is, the Township Auditor. He is running for Supervisor. And so he's out there trying to make a difference. And let's hear a little bit about it from real quick too. Just let's see a little bit how Pennsylvania is doing on Liberty too as we go in here. So Pennsylvania, that's about right here. Here's our Cato map. They're 14th, so they're not actually doing that bad. So this sort of tracks over time how they're doing. And it is kind of a mixed state. Republicans, Democrats, a little bit of a mix. And we can see here their House of Representatives, people for Washington. It's kind of a mix there. But the senators are both blue, and we just saw Fetterman just got elected. So, sorry, Tim, take it away. Tell us a little bit about how what made you decide to run there in Conewago.
So, gentlemen, first, it's an honor and a pleasure for me to be on here with you today. I'm glad you corrected the supervisor versus auditor thing. I didn't want my first words here to be correcting the host. That's always generally bad form. I first came to Liberty and the Libertarian Party. Actually, it was in the summer of 1991. I was attending the Great York Interstate Fair, and the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania had a booth there. And I was a senior in high school and cutting school to go to the York Fair because it's what you do when you're 17 and the York Fair is in town. I really liked the fact that they were for legalized pot. I'm not going to lie. That was what drew me to the party initially. As I started digging into it, my other friends were like, yeah, well, we could just smoke pot anyway. We don't need to make it legal. And I was sort of the guy that was on the outside saying like, okay, well, the legalized pot thing, that's cool. But there's all this other stuff. Like they want people to be absolutely free. They want to lower your taxes. They want to get the government out of your business. And this is, basically a stoner that's 17 years old, long hair, plays, bass guitar in a metal band, is saying this to his other high school friends. So it may be a wee bit of an outcast, which I think has served me well in my later in life as I actually decided to run for political office, being the libertarian, being the outsider, if you will. I will say here in Conewago Township, being a libertarian is not a detriment. A lot of people are hungry for change. They see that the Democrats, the Republicans on the local level, the national level, the state level, not a whole lot of difference between them. They all want to steal your money and go to war with other people. One just wants to regulate what you do with your life, and one wants to regulate what you can do with your body. Both of which I oppose vehemently. I think the government should have no say in what a consenting adult does with or to their own body. So that's sort of where I stand on liberty and how I came to libertarianism and liberty in general.
Well, that's certainly awesome, and it's certainly that you found it at a young age. That's one of the things we like to ask our guests is how they came to discover liberty, because it doesn't just happen through the school system. And of course, that's what you were kind of alluding to there. You found
No, when I had told people later on in my senior year that, like, hey, I'm a libertarian, and I'm looking forward to voting, libertarian in 92, because that was the first presidential election after I had found liberty. They were like, libertarian, why would you want to waste your vote? And I'm like, there's no difference between Bush or Clinton. Like, why would I waste my vote on those two guys? Like, I feel like it's more important to me as a voter and a human being with some dignity and some integrity that I be able to look myself in the mirror after I cast that vote. And just holding my nose and voting for the lesser of two evil, it just doesn't cut it for me.
Yeah, once again, cutting school is the path toward true education in many cases.
Well, yeah, we learned economics because we had to pool our nickels and dimes to have gas money to drive from Gettysburg to York, and then we had to learn bargaining because we had to barter our way into the York Fair, because after we paid for gas, we didn't have money to get in. We had to negotiate food. You learn a lot by cutting one day of school.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Well, breaking out of that government monopolized system.
Yeah, indeed. Yes,
always a positive.
Yeah, drop kicking the old industrialized indoctrination system is always a good thing.
Yeah.
So, Tim, you are currently the auditor of Conewago County.
Yeah.
Conewago County.
Yep. Conewago Township in York County.
Conewago.
Yeah, it's a soft A. Yeah.
Rhymes with Chicago.
Oh, we're on
Kind of.
Chicago.
Okay. Far fewer shootings.
Okay. So what as a libertarian though? I mean, how do you perform your job with those principles in mind?
So unfortunately,
the auditor believe.
Oh, sorry. So unfortunately, the auditor position at the township level doesn't have a whole lot of what you would call power. Like, we get to approve the township supervisor's salaries, and we get to approve the insurance bond amount, and there's little things that they let us have, but due to the Pennsylvania State Code for townships, and this is a Class B, I think is what they registered as, a Class B township, we have to actually have, as a township, we have to have an external paid auditor company. So there's 3 of us on the audit committee that were actually elected. 2 of us are pushing to try and get that changed so that the actual elected auditors can actually audit the township, because it makes a whole lot more sense to us to have somebody that's accountable to the voters going in and looking at their books, looking at their salary. Why are they spending so much? Why are they taxing so much? What are they doing with the money that they do get? Is it justifiable? If it's justifiable, great. But if it's not, somebody needs to hold them to account and be willing to go public to the people and say, this is what they're doing. This is why they're doing it. This is why we don't think it's right. So unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of power being elected auditors. So my plan is, as you see, I'm running for township supervisor this year as well. So the plan is to be the elected auditor for a few years and kind of make libertarian and being a libertarian normal to the voters in Conewago Township, so that they see me and they're like, hey, this guy's a libertarian, and I might not know a whole lot about that party, but I know a lot about Tim. And Tim wants to hold the township supervisors accountable. Tim wants to cut my taxes. Tim wants to, hold the police accountable for the things that they do. Tim's a good dude. And if Tim's a good dude, I'm going to vote for Tim. And if Tim's a libertarian, I'm going to vote libertarian.
So what is
really
it? What is the process? So what is the process that you must go through, or all the auditors in your county? The township, I guess,
to be elected, or
no. What is the process you must go through to change the way you are?
So the first thing we'd have to do is we'd have to get our township supervisors to actually approve a measure. Then we could put that on the ballot on, I guess, next year, not this coming election, but the following year. We'd have to get the required signatures, get the township supervisors to approve that we put it on the ballot, and then collect the signatures to actually get it on the ballot. At that point, Conewago Township could, in fact, fire their paid auditing firm and could actually direct the auditors to do the actual audits.
I see. Okay.
So there's a lot of hoops to go through, a lot of steps to go through. If I'm being completely honest, even if I got elected twice this year and there were two of me on the audit board, I don't think it would pass.
Oh,
Unfortunately. But it's one of those things that the conversation needs to be started. The process needs to get started. The ball needs to get rolling, so to speak. So if I'm the guy that's got to absorb the slings and arrows to try and get that running, then so be it.
okay.
I'm a strong guy. I got broad shoulders. I don't mind carrying the load for a while.
Well, it sounds like the deck is just sort of rigged against change. I mean, the idea that they have this set up there, you're elected to do this job, and yet, you can't even really grab the levers and do much about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's
autopilot.
It's the duopoly pretty much protecting themselves.
Yeah.
It's a way to give people, because honestly, of the three that are on the audit committee now, I'm the only one that was actually on a ballot to get elected. The other two had 12 people that they were friends with that wrote them in, and that's what got them elected. Myself as a libertarian, I would, here in Pennsylvania, we do this thing you may be familiar with called the Moulton Maneuver, which gets a lot of libertarians elected to these sort of lower level, what I like to call entry level elected positions. So what we do is we wait till after the Democrat and the Republican primaries, because there's a gap between when the ballots are finalized and when we can still collect signatures to get on the ballot, since we're a third party, we're a minor party here in Pennsylvania. So we see the offices that don't have a Democrat or a Republican that ran in that primary, which essentially means that's an open seat. Nobody's on the ballot for that. We go out and collect the 15 to 30, sometimes 40 signatures we need to get on the ballot. And that's almost a guaranteed win at that point, because if there's nobody on the ballot, some people will just vote for whatever name is there. And it's unfortunate that people do that. But it's a way to kind of, like I said, in my situation, it's a way to get a libertarian into an elected office and show people that being libertarian and practicing libertarianism and the values of liberty is not some crazy extremist ideology. It's basically what the founders intended.
Mm-hmm. And when you run for this position, do they see on the ballot it's listed as you're a libertarian?
Yep,
That's
absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. And did you get much, what did it take to run as far as once you started running, you got your signatures?
So I got the signatures. I needed to get 15 signatures in like a 3-week period. I got 45 in like 90 minutes, just walking around to, neighborhoods of people that I knew. I was like, hey, I'm Tim. I'm a libertarian. I'm running for this auditor position. Would you like to sign? So I'm on the ballot. About half the people were like, no, I don't sign anything political. The other half were like, oh, you're running for an auditor? What's it do? Yeah, I explained it to them. Like, oh, so what are you going to do as a libertarian? And I explained it to them, 30 seconds, 60 seconds worth of a description, pretty much what I gave you guys to start with. And they're like, yeah, I'd vote for that.
You know what's sad about that, story though, when you talk about it, is that, you're telling people that this is a position that's going to be on the ballot, and that there's a fair number of people who don't even know what the position is. And yet so many people have faith in government that it's going to do what they need it to do, but they don't even know what the pieces are that they're supposed to have an input on.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame, but there's a lot of us here in Pennsylvania that kind of view it like myself as like, hey, this is a way that we can get our foot in the door in the government. We can get a little credential, street cred, I guess, is what the kids would say these days, and say like, hey, I'm a libertarian, I'm elected, and I think that getting elected to a position like auditor, while, it's great, and it's nice to be able to say, hey, I'm an elected official, I'm elected as a libertarian, that's great. The real challenge is moving up from, in my case, auditor to supervisor, or getting reelected. Because we had in Pennsylvania, we had the most elected libertarians of any other state in the union. And I think we have more elected libertarians than the rest of the states combined. Wow. That's not by accident. That is, that was something that the party had decided it was going to do. It was a strategy that we were going to implement to try and use like, okay, this is the first step. We get these auditors and, judge of elections and these small little offices that really nobody wants. There's, some weirdos like me that actually do want that. Want to be able to look at the books and say, this is what you're doing wrong. But there's not a lot of us. But it's a first step. It's a foot in the door. It's a way to say, like, now we're elected. Let's get reelected. Or now we've got some experience in government. We can move on to something bigger.
So Tim, you just stated that libertarians, we have more elected libertarians in Pennsylvania than any other state in the union.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, that's a great thing. That's a great thing. But the question that I really have is that how are the libertarians who are elected, how are they doing in terms of upholding the principles of liberty in at least in the performance of their job? I mean, we know politics is the art of compromise. So how much compromise is going on, or are we seeing good results in terms of they trying their best to uphold the principles of liberty?
For the most part, most of the elected libertarians in the state are doing the right thing. They're fighting the good fight, as we say. They're doing as much as they can in their positions. Like, for instance, in my position, there's not a lot I can actually do as a township auditor to impact that change. One thing that we did do is we lowered the insurance bond from our township by $50,000. Doesn't seem like a lot, saves the township money every month on the premium. We were trying to get the temporary employee salary lowered from what it was to something that's actually more in line with salaries in the area for those positions. We lost that fight because the supervisors really pushed back hard on it. But it is what it is. It was a fight that we were willing to have for that. And it's one of the few things that was within our power. So I think most of the elected libertarians in Pennsylvania are fighting the good fight and doing what they can where they are. It's just the system is so geared to keep us down, to keep any kind of what they view as an interloper out, that it's tough. It's tough to get a foothold in there. So you do have to, there's a certain amount of compromise that you have to have, but you still have to have a backbone and fight the fights that need fought.
Mm.
One of the things I was going to ask you too about, and this is, you kind of alluding to this with all these libertarians getting elected, but how much support do you get from the Libertarian Party there? And it sounds like the organization is pretty strong in Pennsylvania?
So in Pennsylvania, the organization is really strong. There's, as you guys know, or I'm sure you've heard, there's a lot of infighting within the party. And I think that happens, that comes with success. That's more growing pains, I think, than anything else. I usually tend to, if I can, try to stay out of that. Having run for lieutenant governor last year as the LPPA candidate, it was a little tricky to stay out of that. But as far as the national party, most of the candidates that I've spoken to that are on my level neither sought nor wanted any help from the national party. We figure they have bigger fish to fry than us. We're sort of more the do-it-yourselfers. I know for myself, I am. But as far as getting support from the state party, like the state party has pretty much had my back on everything that I've run for in the last 2 years. Like I said, I ran for lieutenant governor here in Pennsylvania last year. The year prior to that, I ran for state senate. So there's been a lot of good support from the state level.
And what would you say is the first step if somebody is watching you and they're saying, "Wow, I want to do this too. I want to make a difference." Contact the state party. Is that what you would recommend? And see how?
No, actually, as a matter of fact, I would say don't contact the state party first. I would say contact your local affiliate first. Like everything in the LPPA right now is sort of geared towards making the local affiliates as absolutely as strong as they can. It's a real kind of bottom up feel here. And that's probably the best advice I give is seek out your libertarian affiliate in your local area. Talk to them. If you're willing to put in any kind of work, they have jobs for you.
Okay. Well, you've also run for lieutenant governor there.
Yep.
And so we've been talking about the local level all this time, but what was different about running for lieutenant governor, and what were some of the challenges you faced in that?
It was a hell of a lot more expensive. I will say that. Traveling to all corners of the state of Pennsylvania, which is not the size of California or anything, but it's spread out, from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia is probably about a 7.5 hour drive. I'm kind of lucky in that I'm just south of Harrisburg where I'm at here. So sort of about the midway point between the two. So that was pretty good. Just catch the turnpike and ride it either way. That was the biggest thing, is because when I campaign, I really like to just be out talking to people, because I think when you make that face-to-face one-on-one connection, that's really where you have the greatest chance to impact change. Doing media and everything, like, that's fun and that's nice, and you have to do it, but you really have to just be out there pressing the flesh. You know, as my dad used to say, I was out shaking babies and kissing hands. You know, so that was the biggest thing, was finding the time to squeeze that all in, because, you know, while I was running for lieutenant governor, you know, I'm also running the farm here. I have a full-time job. I have a wife, 2 kids, 2 grandkids. You know, there's not a whole lot of hours in a day when you start breaking it down and say, I need 2 hours here. I need 2 hours here. You know, I need 8.5 to 9 hours for the day job here. And, you know, and I would kind of like my kids to not feel abandoned. So, you know, there's a lot to it. Is finding the time to squeeze it all in was probably the biggest challenge that I had, you know, and I didn't want to commit to it and give any less than 100%, because I felt it would have been dishonest to everybody that was supporting me, or everybody in the state party that was behind it, and they were putting in the work. So I figured if they can do that, the least I can do is show up and make the effort and do the things that need to be done. Get out there and shake hands. You know, if I have to take a whole weekend and drive out to Pittsburgh and sleep in the back of my car just so I can shake, you know, 100 more hands on a Saturday afternoon and then drive back Sunday morning, like, that's fine. I'll do it. You know, it's the same for, you know, Erie or Pittsburgh or up to the Poconos. You know, whatever I would have had to do to get to that, I was willing to do, because I figured it's the least I could do, you know, for the other folks that were putting in the work as well.
So when you were running for lieutenant governor, how was the reception to the principals?
To the principals, great. Until, you know, people start saying, oh, well, you're a libertarian. I don't know if I can support that. It's like, well, you just said you agree with everything that I said. And Pennsylvania used to be a state where the governor and lieutenant governor were on separate electoral lines. So you could vote for a governor, but you could also vote for a lieutenant governor from a different party. Because I don't know if you guys heard, but the governor race in Pennsylvania was a little bit contested. There were some issues with the candidates, specifically the Republican candidate. He was very much loved by a certain section of the population, and very much detested by the rest of us.
Yeah, I know.
And there were a lot of folks that wanted to support him because he was a Republican, but also liked what I was saying and wanted to support me. And because it had just changed, I think 2 electoral cycles ago, they weren't totally familiar with it. So they were like, well, I could still vote for you. And I'm like, oh, I wish that were true. But no, you kind of have to, well, I'm not going to vote against a Republican. I'm like, keep doing what you're doing. You're going to keep getting what you got. Yeah. I can't make them vote for us. You know, all I can do is get out there and preach the principles as best I can, and hope that, you know, like me, they cut school and want, you know,
sort of break away from the brainwashing for just a little bit.
You gotta try though, because, you know, I'm convinced, and maybe I just have to tell myself this to not lose my sanity. I'm convinced we did good with the campaign. Okay. No matter what the vote tallies were, I am convinced that we opened up some people's eyes to liberty. I'm convinced that because, you know, myself and Matt, who was running for governor, because we were out there and we were talking to people and we were expounding the beauty of liberty and, you know, personal responsibility and getting the government out of your lives. I'm convinced that because we were doing that, a local affiliate maybe got a few more people to join up. The state party maybe got a few more people. Maybe national even got a few more people to switch their registration to Libertarian. So I think no matter what the numbers say, I think we did good.
Okay.
Right. Ultimately, in this run, did you see something that the party needs to do to change in order to make this a realistic possibility that at a state level we can win some of these battles? Or
I you know, it's tricky, because being a libertarian and being very, very much for the individual and being bottom up, I would hate to try and tell national what to do, because I'm not I'm obviously registered libertarian, but I'm not real deep in like the internal machinations of the national party. So I wouldn't want them telling the state or a local affiliate what to do any more than I think I would be any good at telling them what to do. If there was one thing maybe that I would change, it would be maybe that the states kind of voluntarily decide to get together a little bit better on messaging, because there have been some states in some state parties in the LP that have said some things that have wrangled some folks, we'll say, some ruffled a few feathers. And I think that while that may be great for them in their state, it does impact the other states, especially those other states around them that have legitimate shots to put libertarians in some really high positions. So that would be the only thing that I would suggest. And also I would suggest that it's voluntary. I wouldn't mandate it, because obviously I'm a libertarian.
Yeah. Ultimately, did you find that the most important thing is just spreading the message to try and bring more and more people into the party?
It really is. It really is. And not being confrontational about it. And it's sort of, I guess, what do they call it? Edgelording or whatever. And it's just fine and good. And there's a time and place for that. But I think what really matters is getting out. And like I said, it's just getting out and talking to people, just expounding the good word of liberty. Because when people hear what libertarianism with a small L is really about, they're into it, man. Like, they dig it. Like, oh, the government would not tell me what I can do with my property. Sweet. Oh, I can keep more of the money that I actually earn. Wonderful. I'm for that. Oh, if I want a gun, I can buy a gun. But if I don't want a gun, I don't have to buy a gun. Like, that's great. Who wouldn't love that?
Yeah. And I think ultimately, it's everybody lives their life as though libertarian principles are important to them. But when it comes to decisions for other people, that's when maybe they're not quite as libertarian as as they sound.
I try to live by the old libertarian adage that we're libertarians and we're trying to take over the world and just leave people the hell alone.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we're just about at the end of the show, Tim. Did you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with? And James, if we could bring up his pages too real quick so people can see where they can go to find out more about Tim.
Sure. And if we're talking broad strokes here, the biggest thing that I can say to anybody that's watching this, to anybody that's listening, is please, 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 please find your local libertarians. Get with your local libertarian affiliates, whether it's in your county or a regional affiliate, or if there isn't one, find one in the county next to you. Libertarians, one thing that we are really good at is helping other libertarians. So get out there and find those libertarians local to you. A wise man once said, do the best you can with what you have where you are. And I think if anybody that's just new to this liberty movement just started doing that, just do the best you can with what you have where you are, good things are going to come. If we all take care of our own backyards, it's going to be a beautiful community. That's the one thing I'd love to leave people with as a final thought. My race is my race, and what's going to happen is going to happen. And really, it's not even about me. It's about spreading the message of liberty.
Thanks so much, Tim, for joining us on this one. And
thank you for having me. This is fun.
Until then, stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.